Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we're going to talk about two upgradable budget lists in the One Piece card game. The game itself has been super popular in the last couple of weeks. Events have been capping out. We've been seeing so many people have been playing it in person, on webcam, and everything else, and I don't think that's going to, the momentum's not going to stop anytime soon. So I know a lot of people are interested in starting to, try the game out themselves and getting their first deck, so I want to make this video for some budget deck lists that not only are good, for just starting out, but can easily be pivoted to very competitively, viable decks. So we're choosing the Eustass Kid leader and also the Kaido leader. Both of these are starter decks, so this is kind of a video. If you start with either the green or the purple starter deck, I want to go over the base list, a kind of budget upgrade version of the starter decks, as well as show off some, easily affordable kind of competitive decks that have been topping not only here in set 1 in North America, but in set 2 as well. We've seen that Kid and Kaido are still very popular decks in those formats. They're still about as strong as they are in set 1, and they still top these events as well. So we're going to go over both of these with set 1, or the second starter deck. It is Eustass Captain Kid. So starting off, we have the basic green starter deck. This is the exact deck you get with one of the starter decks, with the same ratios too, but already just re-looking at the starter deck, there are just so many good staples that we get out of here, and most of them are at 4 copies as well, which is fantastic. So we have 4 of the Capone Gang Beach, which is just a staple already. Bonnie, one of the best cards in the color, being able to search supernovas, which there are so many good supernovas in green right now. Scratch Manapoo, which also is a supernova, is also a plus 2k counter. Killer, also supernova, and you only get 2 of them, but that's normally about the amount people are running these days anyways. We also see like the Basil Hawkins supernova as well. Eustass Captain Kid, also supernova. Great kind of end game finisher and a good defender as well. And the Trafalgar Law also. This is not as popular, I'd say, as the one from the set, but it is a good card nonetheless. So if you do like it, and it's a 1k counter, so nothing too terrible from it, I think it's a good add there too. So a lot of good cards. Straw Sword, some people use as well. It's something kind of an off meta pick, but still a pick in itself. And I think it's just we just get a lot of good cards from the starter deck in general. So if we have this basic starter deck and we get some commons and uncommons and rares from set 1, here is my example build. Now don't just build this verbatim. I do have some cards at like some weird ratios just to kind of show some option cards for you depending on what cards you do have available to you. But some cards that I think that are totally needed are Force is the Momo package, and pretty much just the whole Wano Country package as well. It's very, very strong for what it is. It's just kind of now, instead of just doing supernovas, you have both. Momo is pretty much the same as Bonnie, being able to search out the top 5 for Wano Country cards, which can include itself too. And then some additional adds too. One is Killer, which is another supernova, but this just being another blocker in the deck is good for you there. Cat Viper, fantastic, searchable as a Wano Country, but also being able to rest something with a cost of 3 or less, which means you can swing into it and get rid of it. Izo, another plus 2k counter, and also a card that you can rest one of your opponent's characters for less. This is an uncommon as well, so you're good there for another 2k counter. And then also Sachi, just as another blocker if you need to, which can be needed. And then Raizo as well, which is another, I think it's an uncommon, right? So all of these I think are just a bunch of uncommons to help spruce up the deck and help you go from there. And then we also have some rares as well. So Okiku is probably the one that you really need besides Momo. Both these are rares, but I think they're very good for what they are. They add a lot of value to your deck. Okiku puts a lot of pressure with the resting something that costs 5 or less, which is being able to rest like your opponent's queen, for example, with this card is great. I think it's added. It's also a Wano Country, so that's good there. X-Drake, if you want to, I don't think I'd run this card at a 4-up. If you have 1 or 2 you want to put in the deck, I think they are pretty good cards there. Beppo as well, it's just another 2k counter, so you can never have too many of these sometimes, so good there. And then also Paradise Waterfall, which is not a rare. I believe this is just a common, uncommon there. If you like this card, people run it like 2 or 3 at max. If you like it, you can run it. And then also Punk Gibson. Again, people run this at like 1 or 2 copies. You don't have to run this card either, but it is a nice little add to the deck. And then finally, we do have the 8-drop Captain Kid. This is probably one of the best super rares in the game. Very strong. It's the reason why we run so many blockers in this deck too. And so if you only can get 2, I think if you want to play this deck, I think you need at least 2, unfortunately. But I think they're pretty safe. Purchases, and as far as I know, they're pretty cheap. They're not too expensive. They're not one of the more expensive super rares right now, so it can be very strong for you there. And you can do a 2-2 split between this and the Captain Kid from the starter deck as well. And since they are supernovas, they are searchable for the Bonnie, so even if you're running 2, you do have some good chances for finding it as well. So here is just kind of the ratios for this. I think, you can adjust your ratios as you want, but if you have something that looks kind of like this, I think you're actually in a really good spot for having a pretty good deck for this format as well. So this is my example for just like budget-friendly cards, an example build, and then we also have 2 deck lists from tournaments recently to kind of show just how similar this is and how much like little you have to upgrade from then on. So going to this is Kevin Zhao's top 4 list from the 130 player case tournament that PPG had this past weekend. So we're looking at this list specifically, and we're seeing that there's no event cards at all, which is really nice. And looking at the ratios, they're very, very similar to the budget deck that I just showed you guys as well. Only difference is that they chose to put Beppel at a hard 4-rev just for extra 2k counters, and then also the Trafalgar Law as well. So this card is probably a little bit expensive right now. I think it's about $20 per copy. So if this isn't in your budget, do not worry about it. It's not an instant 4-rev, especially compared to how Trafalgar Law, the leader, needs at 4. Like this can just tack in a copy or 2 and get some value from it, and there's that. If you need another Basil Hawkins, you can get that too. Either buy a single or get another starter deck, which again, having 2 starter decks is not too bad. The 7-drop Kid's actually still a pretty good card in my mind too, but I think the 8-drop is still by and large just a better card, especially with again being able to play this, use its effect to play a blocker, and then your opponent having a hard time to get rid of it, and then it just really sets up the next turn. You're really in a bad spot if you're looking across the board at this thing most of the time. So that is the kind of Eustass Kid here, and then we have the top 2 list. So spoilers, Singapore had a big 400 player tournament. We made a video over it, and first and second place get the same pricing, so they split it. Top 2 were an Eustass, Captain Kid, and a Kaido as well, which is part of the inspiration for this video. So this list is incredibly similar to our set 1 decks too. The only set 2 card is the Yamato here, and this Yamato is just a rare as well, and you're just running at 2 of. The only other thing is the Yamato secret rare. Honestly, I think this is more of just a flex card in a lot of ways. I've never, ever had it go off and get the double attack banish for us. It is a Wano country, so it is searchable off Momo, which is nice. And if you don't have this card, I think like this deck is so just super solid without it. If you just even want to put 4 of this card, you're probably fine. Or just another Wano country card that can help just get your consistency with Momo. I don't know, it's just very good. It's a very strong deck still, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon, at least without any kind of intervention if Bandai wants to do any card balance changes there. So this is my overview of Eustass Captain Kid. Again, I think it's very good for anyone trying to get into this game in the first place, especially since the deck itself is just really well-rounded and teaches you either if you want to be aggressive or defensive. It kind of allows those play styles. So there's that, and then we're going to go into the Kaido builds. So Kaido is pretty strong in this game. It is a different play style in general too. It is very, very control heavy, and then you just kind of have a blowout turn at the end. Normally just kind of setting your opponent from 2 life to 0 with a combination of your big attackers and everything else. And so if we go through the starter deck, Black Maria is a great card for us. Blockers in this deck is good. Who's good as well, and normally 2 is like the sweet spot for it as well. Jack is an okay card. Some people run it like 1 or 2, so having 2 copies of it is great. Ulti at 4 of is our super counter, and that's good too. Queen and King are probably the ones you're feeling the worst. You definitely want Queen at 4 copies. It is never ever dead. And then we have King, which you usually want like 3 or 4 copies as well. So these are 2 cards that you might need to shell out either the singles cost or getting another starter deck for, as well as Kaido. 4 is probably a bit too expensive for this, but usually you run it like 3 is the sweet spot for this guy too. So you do maybe like if you get 2 starter decks for Kaido, you can almost always just like put them together and have a good deck by itself. Blast Breath at 4 though is just a 1 counter 1K, sorry, a 4K one cost counter is fantastic. Bracho Bomber sees some play every once in a while, and Onigashima Island at 4 of. You always want this at 4 at Kaido as well. So here is the starter deck as it is, and then going into our big kind of upgraded list as well. I've just kind of put a bunch of cards in this guy, and just to again show what the deck looks like. Again, I really kind of think you need 4 of these queens. So unfortunately, if that means getting a second starter deck or having to buy the singles, I'm not sure what the singles cost right now, but they're probably not too bad. But it's just such a good card for what it is, and you're really gonna miss it if it's any less than 4, especially since it's a 1K counter. So again, you can always counter with it. King I left at 2. There's the new King from the set. This is pretty cheap for what it is right now too. It's kind of just a wider version of the 6K King, so or 6-drop King. So for 7 and Dawn -2, you get to KO something with 3 cost and 2 cost. So being able to hit 2 cards is pretty good. 7 means it sometimes comes out a turn later, and Dawn -2 is obviously worse than Dawn -1, but it is a great card. And like having a 7K body that can put pressure on your opponent after it hits the board is great. And then also the 10-drop King from the set. I don't know how I feel about this card still. 2 is usually about the number I run. Sometimes it just wins you the game, but most of the time it just is like dead in your hand and you wish it was like any other card. So it's fine for what it is. I don't think if you don't like the card, you don't have to run it either. In my mind, you can kind of stock up on like the lower range removal, but I think like 2 is like the sweet spot for you there. So the purple has a lot of 2K counters in the set as well. So we have the Orochi, we have the Sasaki, and we have the X-Drake as well. I think by and large X-Drake is the best one, but it is also a rare. So if you just need like common 2K counters, the Orochi is fine there too. Sasaki also is a rare too, but it does have some potential for some good effects off of ramping if you really need it to. You do have to play it and then attack with it, but that's not too bad for what it is. And then also, in the lieu of having another king, I also did mention the queen. It is a rare from the set. Just Dawn -1, you get to give this character rush and give something -2K. So if you think of it like a king, you are able to like either rush, which means you can do some late game pressure, and it's a 1K counter, which is not as it's not as dead in hand as always, but it means you can swing with it and get rid of something too. So, and it's essentially like a 7K on the swing, and so it's fine. It's fine for what it is. If you need like a budget replacement for king, or if you don't have another starter deck available to you, I think that is good for you there. What else do we have? That's pretty much it. There's also just Thunder Bagua. I think this is a good card. Some people run it 4, some people run it 2, some people run it at 0. So I did want to mention I think it's a great card. The trigger for being able to add Dawn as well is a good kind of card for you there. And Bracho Bomber at 2 is still okay if you're missing out on some kings or some more removals. It does also have a great trigger by ramping 1 Dawn if it gets hit in there, and I think that's nice. And I also did want to mention the 2 big vanillas. So we have the Babanuki as a 5-drop with 7K, as well as the Fuku Rokuju, which is a 6-drop with 8K as well. And so these are like, sometimes you just drop these guys and then they stick on the board for the entire game and they apply a lot of pressure to your opponent and they just can't do anything about it. We're still in set 1, so vanillas are still like really high cost vanillas can still do a lot of damage. And so don't, even though they don't have effect, don't overlook them. They can be good cards to add to these builds as well. So especially since you're ramping up, being able to play this like early is very good. So that is my example kind of list going over the cards and stuff. And then we're going to go over Isaac Diaz second place list for that same PPG tournament. So a second place and 137 players with this guy here. So very, very strong still in set 1, and I think there's a lot of good cards in this build too. So we're seeing that just doing a bunch of these counters. So Orochi, Sasaki, X-Drake. Obviously, Ulti can fill the spot for any of these. You're rarely playing the X-Drake or the Sasaki in the game, so it doesn't really matter as much. You also see that they took out the Black Maria for the 4-cost one as well, which is a kind of another budget option for you if you need it to. So it's only it's a rare for the set, so not it's fine for what it is. Blocker, it has a 1K counter. Then also On block, Dawn -1, this character gets plus 1k power during this turn. So if your opponents are swinging a bunch of 5ks and you want to save this Black Maria without having to actually invest any Dawn into it or any cards in hand, you can totally do it, which is nice. Babanuki at 4, so talking about those vanilla powers, it's very strong. We do see 4 of the king and none of these, starter or the set 1 kings as well. So that is something to, if you don't want to invest in that card, you don't have to. You do probably need. This 6-drop king is really good too. The 5 and 6 are great, and then a 3 of the 9-drop and the 10-drop Kaidos as well. So this is, again, Isaac Diaz's list. I think if it's not too expensive for what it is either, and it can be kind of like a transition to kind of like a goal deck list for players playing Kaido. And then lastly, again, the top 2 for a Singapore list were a Kaido and a Kid, and which again was part of the reason to make this video, because this list is a very, very set 1 looking list with only a couple of cards added to it to kind of make it that set 2 deck. So first is the Shiki, which is a plus 2k counter, but also as has a trigger for Dawn -1 to play this card, which is great because sometimes you're just like 1 attacker away from lethal a lot with Kaido. So being able to get a card that comes out for free, and worst case, you put it back in your hand, you have a 2k counter. This seems like a really good add for the deck in set 2. We also have the additional Hell's Judgment here too. So it's a 2-drop counter. Dawn -1, give up to 2 of your opponent's leaders, or 2 of your opponent's leaders are characters -3k power during this turn. So this can be used for 2 Dawn to prevent 2 damage from coming in, which is great. And also the trigger is if your opponent has 6 or more Dawn, your opponent returns 1 of their Dawns to their Dawn deck. So being able to unramp them 2 on a trigger can really screw up some of their plays as well. So I think this is a great kind of add to the deck too. But as you see, the main core, the bread and potatoes for this is just the set 1 and starter deck build, and just with a couple additional cards added to it. So again, if you guys want to invest in some decks to not only play right now, but to play in the future, in the next couple of months in the One Piece card game, I think both these Kings and Kaido, starter decks and upgrading them are really, really good ways to do that. So again, hope you guys got some value from this video. If you guys have any feedback or any other questions about this card game or getting into it, please don't hesitate to leave some comments below. And that will be it for me. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all next time. Damn it.